Good morning. It's Torte de Lini. For starters, I'm a little sick, so I apologize if I sound more nasally than usual. I do want to talk about the hero you're looking at now. For the longest time, Batrider was mostly played as a position 2 mid laner. The hero not only had great initiating ganking ability to create tempo and momentum for your team, but his laning stage was probably one of the most oppressive experiences for enemy players to deal with, right up there with, I think, Viper or even Huskar. However, in recent times, it seems that the hero is being relegated more as a support hero, specifically POS 4. And I've always wondered why that is. Why is POS 4 just so popular? And you can see right here, just a lot of people playing it at the pro level as well as at the high MMR 8, 9, 10K pub games, which is really nice to see. We've seen a little bit of Batrider played as a POS 3 and a POS 4, but it's really nice to see him being played more thoroughly and professionally as the support hero. So let's talk about the history. Since 7.33, this hero has received a variety of revisions and changes, some good, some not so bad, but really it kind of explains why this hero is played as a support. Kind of made him more than just a walking ultimate ability, and which is kind of how we used to interpret him. And when you look at these changes across the 2 years that it's been happening to him, you can kind of look at these changes as an interpretation twofold. So the first interpretation is that the one thing you have to understand with these changes is that they nerfed his sticky napalm, right? It lost a lot of what made it so strong in the early game. It has had its slow reduced, as well as its base and stacking damage reduced twice over. What this translates to is essentially sticky napalm is not as influential as it once was in the lane. You can see here, he never uses sticky napalm, pretty much only uses the second interpretation of these changes, which is actually kind of cool. Number two, the interpretation is that Flame Break compensates for some of sticky napalm's weakness. It now slows for 15%. It displaces the enemy, and the range is pretty insane, 450. I'll show you the range right here. Look at that. Look at that range. Is that not absolutely wild? That's without 8 lens or anything. That's just level 1. That's crazy, right? So, the last change I think we do have to talk about is Firefly. What about Firefly? Well, Firefly is neutral ground, I'll call it, where it's still good at being an initiation and a follow-up ability to your ultimate, Flaming Lasso, and it is your greatest farming spell in the game. But that said, in 7.33, it did lose its movement speed, which greatly affects you in the early game, as closing the gap on your opponent is one of the key challenges for Batrider until you obviously buy Tranquil Boots, Force Staff, and more importantly, Blink Dagger. So while Batrider, I guess, could be still played as a mid laner, it's not really, the strength of Batrider as a core hero has diminished greatly. You don't really have as much influence in the lane without significant cost to lay down a lot of the stacks of sticky napalm. And without the bonus movement speed of Firefly, closing the gap on your opponent is much more difficult than what we see here, a nice cool gank for Batrider and Nature's Prophet. Furthermore, what made Batrider so strong in the mid lane was that the map was once catering to heroes that could farm the side lanes regularly to compensate for when the mid lane creep wave was pushed. That's definitely still doable on the Radiant side, but on Dire, the distance is a little bit more, even with Firefly to kind of cut down on the travel time. And on top of that, in 7.35, I don't know if you guys remember, but you can see here, neutral creeps bounty decreased by 2 across the board. And that hurts heroes like Batrider here. Doesn't really make them all that great to then farm those camps. What it also means is that, for Batrider, it makes it so that playing against contested mid lanes, against current popular mid laners like Puck and Zeus and Pangolier, just makes it harder to kind of succeed against them, because they all have great escapes the moment they see Batrider trying to get near them after stacking multiple sticky napalms. So that answers one part of the question, which is why is Batrider here not being played as a mid laner? But how does that make him a support? Well, from a general sense, just a general meta sense, when a hero shifts from core to support, it sometimes more has to do with what the hero has to offer versus if the meta accommodates its playstyle. Batrider, as a position 4 supporter, still achieves a lot of everything that he has to offer without taking a core role from his team, With the nerfs to Sticky Napalm and the buffs to Flame Break, the hero is now more about the early game long range initiation, which you're just seeing right here, with your Pulse 3, then about weak zoning with Sticky Napalm that'll just deplete your mana. With popular offlane heroes like Mars, Centaur, Enigma, Tidehunter, those are great heroes. You can already imagine how Batrider's long range, slow, and displacement can be capitalized by these kinds of heroes and creates a lot of pressure and, more importantly, kill threat in the offlane, especially with Batrider's Firefly. Especially with the access as well to blood grenade slows as a follow through. So Flame Break and Flaming Lasso are honestly his best abilities to a team, and both of them are basically setups, right? You're not getting a kill with Flame Break, you're not getting a kill with Flaming Lasso. That's essentially the basic logic here, where he basically sets it up and everybody else finishes them off. That obviously leads you to think this is a support hero, right? With how prevalent Dispel is right now with Black King Bar, Manta Style, Yules, and Disperser, it further shows kind of how irrelevant Black Batrider Sticky Napalm is and how much Flame Break and Flaming Lasso is emphasized. With Mage Slayer and Solar Crest also pretty common items, right? We see him on Crystal Maiden, we see him on Techies, we see Mage Slayer on Tidehunter is fantastic. Emperor Spirit, you still see it. Basically, his Firefly just gets dinged in efficiency, despite it still having decent damage. I mean, look at this guy. He's farming the camps with Firefly. So, how do you play Batrider? Well, if you haven't figured it out already, you can always use my guide. But playing Batrider as a support is, as I said, he's a hero that doesn't really need priority in farm to achieve what he needs to do with Flaming Lasso and Flame Break. What's great is that Firefly is still a great farming ability, right? You still stack multiple jungle camps, and you use Firefly's free pathing to farm all of your core items, Tranquil Boots, Blink Dagger, Force Staff. During the lane, you rely on your universal attribute damage to harass enemies, pull cams, use Flame Break to push enemies out who are out of position, then you push them towards you to then rely on Firefly and on your early boots of speed to burn them alive as they run. You're about to see a gank here, I think, in a bit. Now, if the enemies choose to fight, your offlane core typically responds and kills them. Really, your goal as Batrider is to create space and pressure lanes and give off a sense of kill threat, and that continues up into the mid game, which you see here, where you have your Flaming Lasso ultimate ability, you smoke the seed up with Tranquil Boots and the free pathing from Firefly for ideal positioning when you start ganking the middle and the safe lane. Even without Flaming Lasso, honestly, being able to blink on enemies with no escape ability to then Firefly them to death with your team is a great initiative, and you can still use Flame Break to kind of push fleeing enemies back towards you if they somehow manage to outrun you. To note that you still max Sticky Napalm second to help with your farm as it combos well with Firefly, just not so much on enemies except as your means of contribution when you've exhausted all your other abilities. So Flame Break is really good as a level 1 ability. Sticky Napalm is still good to stack up, especially when you feel a little bit unsafe or when you Flaming Lassoed Firefly someone back and then you just Sticky Napalm for damage that everybody then takes advantage of by dealing even more damage with it. So, what are the ramifications of Batrider as a support? To be honest, it's just a pattern we often see when it comes to balancing and how sometimes ability nerfs and buffs dictate a hero's placement in a match or in a patch. In my previous video, which you can go see on this channel specifically, we see that Terrorblade is now being played more regularly as a support because the developers have made his reflection have decent scaling from the early to mid game. And the same applies here for Batrider, right? Where his Sticky Napalm nerf has killed his early game laning dominance, but his Flame Break has a lot more to offer early on as a setup with the right off-lane core teammate. So the fact that Batrider can farm very well with Firefly is not an indication that he should be played as a core. The question is about how much Batrider capitalizes on that farm to justify taking a core role. And that answer is not much, to be honest. After the few items that we talked about, like Tranquil and Blink, he kind of tapers off in value outside of his Flaming Lasso. We see a lot of heroes like this, heroes that we could see work as a core but are relegated to support, both because what they offer can still be achieved in the early game with no real need for items, and because they can easily farm key items. Bounty Hunter, obvious one. Bounty Hunter is more of a hero killer. Hoodwink of Acorn Shot, Techies, Tiny, Tiny as a 4 or as a 2. All these heroes have a lot of early to mid game impact, but late game they just don't achieve as much in terms of itemization as core heroes, or just don't fit into the meta sometimes. Perfect example, I recommend this Tiny as a support. Starts out the same way as Tiny mid laner. They both grab Blink Dagger ASAP to farm kills in the early to mid game using Toss and Avalanche. And sometimes the circumstances of the hero, as well as an environment, aka the meta, affects whether we see them as a core or support hero. So let's conclude this out before I lose my voice. Batrider can still be played as a core mid laner or off laner. Across the past year of patches, the developers have neutered Batrider's sticky napalm, lowering his ability to influence the lane while also propping up Flame Break to make 2 of his most influential abilities all about setting up kills rather than direct damage. This shifts Batrider's most influential power timing to be in the early game and mid game rather than the mid-late game. And Batrider still farms very well with Firefly, but with the prevalence of Mage Slayer, Firefly does significantly less damage to enemy lineups. Simply put, Batrider in its current state and meta climate is a strong position 4 than a mid-laning core hero. Thanks for watching, and have a good morning.